guys, how you doing? Today we're going to look at dialing in Sarniezz by Angine de Poitrine on Quad Cortex for the guitar. Just to highlight the gear King uses, it's a Roland Jazz chorus. Most of this other stuff isn't on the Quad Cortex unless you go getting captures, but I usually like to stay on board. So loading up the Jazz chorus, this is it here, the Rolls Jazz CH120. If you at any point need to, just pause to grab the settings for a specific block. I won't dwell on them too much, but we've got 2/3 volume here. We've got a thin sound EQ wise. We've pulled out a lot of bass. It's pretty bright on the treble and the bright switch. Looking at the cab we've paired with that, I went with the US PRN Brown Fat J10s. And you can see all of the settings here. We've just moved the mics around a bit and turned down the second mic's level. On page 2, we've rolled off the high pass filter and the low pass filter. And the reason I did this was to give it a bit of a lo-fi, badly recorded sound, because you know, if you listen to the original recording, they have it's only like the White Stripes. It's like an old school recording sound. Very clean, very unprocessed. And I find that shaving off the edges of the cab just brings it more towards that sound. Scene A is for the main riff that we hear for a lot of the song, most of the song. Moving on to the EQ, we cut off a lot of bass, as you can see here. We've got a high pass and a frequency of 206, and then we push the mids a lot at 792. And you can copy the other settings here. That just gives it a bit of a honky sound. And note the output here changes per scene as well. To do that, we right-click and assign it to scenes. And then, as you see here, we go through the song and that value changes a bit. The last thing that's enabled on scene A is the compressor, and you can see the settings here. There's nothing overly unusual. The makeup's maybe a little high. We're pushing the front of the amp nearly like a distortion pedal would. Another thing you're going to want to do on scene A is right click this button here on the input to assign the gain reduction to scenes, so we can kick that on if the patch gets noisy. Now we can move on to scene B, which is this sound here. This is just a slightly more pushed version of the scene A, just to make it sound a bit heavier and lift the energy as the song builds. You can see here we've got middle volume and output, and we've stayed thin. We've brought the bass up a bit, but we're still quite thin, and we've backed off the treble a bit. But yeah, you can see all that there. Note the EQ block was turned off, and we've engaged the Brit Blues pedal, and all of the values there about 3/4. And note that noise reduction on the input block is also engaged. Moving on to scene C, it's this riff here. What adds that strange character to this sound is the tremolo block here. We've got it synced to the song tempo, which I've set to 116 BPM, and then we've got the 30-second note fluctuation. And you can see all the other settings there if you want to deep dive those. And then page 2 is here. On scene C, the input noise reduction is off. The Brit Blues has changed slightly, not dramatically. It's mostly the same, but the values have changed if you want to look at those. The amp, the same thing. They're roughly the same, but you know, the bass has come down a little bit. We're pushing the treble again because this is a very bright sound. Just have a close look at the amp there also. And note the EQ block has turned back on. Finally, we're going to look at scene D, and this is the fast riff at the end of the song, which is this. The most prominent change on this scene is the octaver block, the poly octaver here. We're getting 100% of the original dry signal and most of the bass note, which you can see here, the sub bass note. We're not taking in any of the high octave here. The noise reduction is on, as you can see there. The Brit Blues is on, and the values have changed quite a lot. So have a look there. We've pushed the gain a lot. We've taken a lot of the tone down to darken it up a bit, and we're pushing the volume just to hit the front of the amp really hard. The amp's volume settings are roughly the same. The bass has come up a lot to give meat to the heavy part of the song, and then we're just backed off the trebles a bit to not have it be very harsh. The tremolo block was turned off, and the EQ is off again. So that's everything for the first guitar. We'll move over to the second guitar now. And again, just a reminder, if you want to see how those two guitars are performing with each other and what scenes they're using, there's a performance video below. Scene A on guitar 2 is this riff here. This patch looks a bit more complicated than the first guitar. We'll get into why soon. For now, we're just going to focus on this top line here and ignore this bottom line. This only engages on scene C. So we can just focus on the top line for now. We'll start with the amp, which is the jazz chorus again. Very similar settings. The volumes are very similar. The bass is, it's a thin sound again, and you know, we're pushing on the upper end. The cab is the same. We might have some slightly different values if you look at the distance and the position, and this mic is quieter than the first mic, just note all that. And we've rolled off the high pass filter and the low pass filter. Again, we discussed that already. We have an EQ block after the amp, which is pretty much the same as the first guitar. We've got a high pass type, we've got the frequency there, and then we're pushing on the mids to get it sounding a bit honky. And just to note, the output there is -3. We've got a Brit Blues again in front of the amp, which has slightly different settings than the first time around. We've got mid gain and 2/3 tone and volume, and the compressor is going to be in front of the pedal, the distortion pedal, and it's very similar values. I think it's the same values actually. Same idea on the input with the noise gate. It's off for now, but we have the ability to toggle it if we set it to scenes. We'll move on to scene B, which is the end riff, the fast riff at the end. Mono version of that riff, it's only going through the top channel here. Look at the stuff that changes by scene. The noise gate is on. The Brit Blues has changed a bit. We're pushing most of the settings to 2/3. The amp is now pushing its gain, the front end gain a bit, and the bass has come up, you can see here, and the treble is backed off a little bit, and we're pushing quite hard on the mids. The EQ block is off. Finally, moving on to scene C, I'll give you a listen. So this is finally the scene where the bottom row engages here, and the idea is that we are stacking in another guitar or another take. We're faking another take basically. We'll run through the top line settings first, and then I'll show you how the double take works. Noise gate is off. Here's the Brit Blues settings. They're like 2/3, but they'd have wiggled around slightly. The amp settings are here. We've still got the gain pushed on the front and the bass low, and then pushing slightly on the mids and hard on the treble. Cab doesn't change per scene. And then the EQ, we're pushing a little harder here at 1.5, which is the same idea on the first one. And then looking at scene C here, the mixer, which is this little dot right here, we're panning the top line left, the bottom line right. Just to show you on scene A and B, these are both centered because we want that top line centered and we're not listening to the bottom line. So this is essentially just centering the top line. And then on scene C, we split the top line left and the bottom line right to give it a stereo effect. Looking at that bottom line, we hit a doubler first and we turn the dry level off. The doubler is kind of hard to find. It's in this bottom folder down here in utility, and then there it is there. And basically what this does is it listens to the dry signal of your guitar and it replicates it imperfectly. It makes an imperfect copy of it. And so if we turn off the dry level and only listen to the effects level, we are only allowing the duplicate to run through this line here, which is how we can fake a second take. That hits the tube screamer, which is mostly 2/3 settings here. We've got the tone at half, and that's hitting the jazz chorus again, a copy of the jazz chorus with reasonably similar settings, except the bass is pushed quite high if you look here, and the treble is quite high and the bright switch is off. The cab is quite similar, if not copied. You can see the distance and position here and the low volume ribbon mic. And then on the roll-offs, we've just rolled off the high pass filter and we have not done it on the low pass filter. And then like we said, that line arrives here at pan B and we're going to keep that on the right. And then this line here is pan A. We keep that on the left. If you enjoyed this, guys, I've also done Hot for Teacher here and Cowboys from Hell here. If you have any requests, please let me know. And yeah, cheers.